Welcome to Sit, Stay, Read, the podcast for every wag, whinny, and whisker. I'm Kathleen Donnelly, award-winning author and retired canine handler. Each week, I chat with novelists about the bond we share with our furry friends and how they inspire stories. Grab a coffee, get cozy with your favorite pet. It's time to sit, stay, read. Well, today I'm thrilled to welcome award-winning author and fellow dog and horse lover, Laurien Berenson, to the show to discuss her latest release, Die Another Dane, book 31. Holy cow, 31 books and the Melanie Travis Canine Mystery Series. Laurien, welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Absolutely.
Well, I'm delighted to have you. Your book was delightful. It was a page turner. It had some great twists. And of course, it had plenty of dogs for the dog lover. But
hmm
I wanted to start with 31 books. When I saw that, I was like, wow, did you ever imagine this series having 31 books when you started it?
No, no. I thought it would be one book.
Wow.
Before I wrote this book, I had written 10 or 12 standalone books, and I thought this would be another one. And at the time I was showing dogs, I was breeding and showing poodles, and I thought this dog show world would be such a great place to set a mystery novel. And this was actually in 1994. That's how long ago it started.
Okay.
And cozy mysteries existed. There were people like Nancy Picard and Carolyn Hart writing sort of a lighter mystery, but they weren't a genre. It was mostly thrillers. Everyone wanted to do thrillers, and I wanted to do that lighter type of mystery. And I thought, but set it at a dog show. This is going to be so much fun. You know, I know all the dog people and all the dogs. And so I thought I'd just write one. And my agent was able to sell it. And the editor, my wonderful editor that I still have, called up and said, I'd
Fantastic.
like three. And
Oh,
I
wow.
went, three what? I was like, I had one idea. So then I thought, well, I could get another idea and maybe a third. And it just went like that. There were three, and then I had a 2 book contract, and then I had a 3 book contract, and it just kept going. No, I had not a clue that it would go on. I mean, it has been literally since 1995 is when the first book came out. So it's been 30
Wow.
years. Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's wonderful. And Die Another Dane releases this coming Tuesday, October 28th, I
hmm
believe. And so it'll be out by the time this podcast airs. Go ahead and tell us about book 31, about Die Another Dane.
Book 31, and you and I discussed this a little bit before, that Melanie has a family and she is the main character, Melanie Travis. She is a school teacher, actually a special needs tutor, and she breeds and shows standard poodles. And she has a family, and her 6-year-old son sees a Great Dane and decides he wants one. And of course, he's small. Great Danes are large, and they already have 6 dogs in their house, and they
Yeah.
really do not need another, much less a Great Dane. But Melanie's Aunt Peg, who is a dog show judge and knows everyone in the dog show world, says, "Well, I will introduce you to a Great Dane breeder, and Kevin can see some Great Danes. He'll realize how big they are. Everything will be fine." And Melanie goes to meet with this woman, and the woman says, sort of, your reputation precedes you because Melanie has solved more than a couple of mysteries set in the dog show world. And she says, someone has stolen a brooch from me, a very valuable brooch, and I'd like you to find it for me. And Melanie says, well, I've never done anything like that, but I'm happy to ask a few questions. And off she goes. And while she's asking
Nice.
questions, the woman who asked her to do this is killed. And that's the beginning of she now feels an obligation, sort of, to find out this woman sent her off on a small quest, and it's now become a much bigger quest. And as with all the earlier books in the series, it's set in the dog show milieu. And so a lot of the people that are involved are showing various breeds, including Great Danes and also poodles.
I love that.
So,
Yeah, I've only been to a few dog shows in my life. I was a canine handler with narcotics dogs, so very different world. But
wow, that's cool.
thanks. So, but I have visited a few dog shows, and I thought just what I've observed a couple times, you did a beautiful job of pulling the reader into this world. And I thought I don't know how you found the balance. It was perfect between the setting at the dog show and explaining things that I was like, oh, that's what that was for, or that's what they were doing, and keeping the story moving and the mystery moving. Is that hard, or is that just something that comes natural because you did show dogs?
Part of it is hard. The hard part is not bogging things down with too much explanation. And
Yeah.
in the earlier books in the series, like 1 through 5 or 1 through 10, I did explain a lot more about dog shows, and people would say to me exactly that. Oh, now I understand points, or now I understand why you're a
Yeah.
champion. And but then I sort of stopped doing that, having this bit of exposition. But to use dog shows as a background, um, it actually, I showed dogs and bred dogs for about more than 20 years. My mother also
Wow.
bred and showed dogs, and my
Okay.
grandmother did the same thing.
Oh,
So
wow.
someone in my family has been showing dogs for 100 years, which is kind of crazy to think about at this point.
Yeah.
So when I was little, I went to dog shows with my mother, who was showing her dogs. And dog shows have actually changed quite a lot, as everything has. So they're slightly different. My dog shows are a little bit of the nostalgic past of maybe more like 10 or 15 years ago, because dog
Okay.
shows now have gotten smaller, and they're not held quite the
Okay.
same way. But it's a very familiar backdrop to me. And I have so many friends who are still showing dogs, and believe me, if I get something wrong, they're going to let me know. They're like, "Hey, wait a minute, the wrong dog won," or something. So, but the hard part is not bogging it down with explanation. And I think, as I said, I've
Yeah.
done less explanation, but other than that, it's to me, it's like stepping onto that showground and seeing the rings and seeing the tents
Yeah.
all in front of me, and all I have to do is talk about it, which is really nice.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, did your mother and grandmother also show poodles? Was that sort of the
No,
family?
they
Okay.
they, they did not. My grandmother actually had wire fox terriers and Scotties,
Oh, cool. Oh,
and she
wonderful.
became a terrier group judge. And then my mother had Norwich terriers.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and I really
Okay.
like terriers. I just wanted, actually, when I got my first poodle, I had grown up with my mother's dogs. I'd seen other dogs, and I said to myself, I want the smartest dog in the world. And really, I'm sorry, it's a poodle. I mean, okay, other people will have other opinions, but really, it's a
Right.
poodle. They just read your mind, They
I
they
do.
and so I did. So I got a standard poodle, and then that made me learn how to do the grooming. And I was
Yeah.
fortunate to meet some wonderful people who, helped me out, and because the showing part I knew. But poodles are obviously very different than terriers. Not that
Yeah.
terriers don't require a lot of grooming, but it's different grooming. It's
It is
it's
different.
stripping. And the poodles are clipping. It's, slightly different. So I had a lot to learn, but I did. I enjoyed it. So that was how I got started.
Oh, that's so neat. I agree. Poodles are very smart. I house sat in college for, I took care of a poodle, and she was just the neatest dog. And she would, I'd say something, and she just, okay, I'll go do it.
Well,
Okay.
they're very, I think more than most breeds, they're very people oriented. And
Yeah.
I've had other wonderful dogs. Um, but poodles are just like, they kind of know what you're thinking. They don't always do
Yeah.
what you want them to do, but they know what, they'll have a reason. They'll tell you the
Yeah.
reason they're not doing it. I'm not doing it because it's raining outside, but thank you for asking.
Yeah.
So it's like living with another person almost, someone who has some opinions and something to say about life.
I love it. And then I found the Great Dane part interesting. I mean, I was wondering, were you going for like the biggest dog for Kevin being the 6-year-old kid, or was there another reason you chose the Great Dane? Because okay, I love all dogs. I haven't met a dog I don't love, but the Great Danes I've met have been wonderful too.
Well, actually, to be perfectly honest, in when I did the first book in the series, Pedigree to Die For, I did standard poodles, which was what I knew. And my
Yeah.
editor was kind of like, even way back then, he said, but there are a lot of other breeds of dogs, maybe you could talk about some other breeds because
Yeah.
he didn't want to put a poodle on every cover. So it was less about the plot
Okay.
than the covers, that aspect of it. And I was like, poodles are great. We can put poodles on every cover, but that so didn't work. Um, so I started having another breed in every book. So since
Okay.
there are 31 books, there have now been 30 other breeds that I've talked about. And I will tell you exactly where the Great Dane idea came from. Not actually from me, but I was talking to my agent and she said, I thought of a really wonderful title for a book because my editor loves books that are like puns. Like one of the ones before this was Pup Fiction. He
I
likes
saw
that
that.
kind of thing,
Yeah.
something that sounds like a movie title but has somehow a dog pun in it. And she said, "How about Die Another Dane?" And I said, "Oh, that's really perfect. I mean, that's exactly
Yeah.
what John likes." So that was then I was writing about Great Danes, which is fine with me. I've had friends that had them, and interestingly enough, both poodles and Great Danes are originally German bred. They're German dogs,
Okay.
and it's like Doberman Pinschers, Schnauzers. There's a bunch of different breeds that originated in Germany, and they have elements of their temper. They're all very smart. They're all very smart, and
Mhm.
they all learn very quickly. And it's interesting to. So I was using another German initiated breed, but that was where the Great Dane idea came from. Was from my agent having this title, and I said, "Oh, that's wonderful. I can do that." So that's where it came from. But I've used so many other breeds. Through the, well,
Mhm.
30 other breeds. That's how many other breeds through the years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was flipping through your title, or not flipping through, but just scrolling through just to get an idea, and there's some really fun one. I mean, just and I love the titles. I love what your editor did with that. I don't think we can talk about, or we need to talk about another character who's Aunt Peg, and it looks like she came in right at the beginning. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. And
Yes.
she was a wonderful character, and the book stands so well on its own. I mean, here I am coming into book 31 and no problems, but now it makes me want to go back and learn more about everyone. So tell us about
Well,
Aunt Peg, and if is there an
I'll,
Aunt Peg in real life?
I will have first. I'm going to show you something. Aunt Peg has her own series now. Aunt
Oh,
Peg
that
has,
is her. Okay.
yeah, she has her own series.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting because so many people have said to me. There was a woman judge who is somewhat similar to Aunt Peg. She also bred and showed standard poodles. Her name was Annie Clark. She's no longer here. And so many people have said to me, "Is she based on Annie Clark?" Which she isn't. And none of the characters in the book are based on real people, except for Aunt Peg, who was a very good friend of mine whose name was Helen
Okay.
Sulkup. And
Okay.
she's the only person in the series that is a real person, and she also has passed away since the series started. But I told her that. I told her that when the first book came out, or maybe the second or third, and I said to her, "Well, you know your Aunt Peg, don't you?" And she said, "I am not," which
Oh
was just so perfect. So
no. That fits Aunt Peg.
that it is, and she was a wonderful woman and so knowledgeable, so such a proponent of the poodle breed and an enthusiast, and she wanted everyone to know how wonderful they were, and she knew everybody. She was a judge and a breeder, and she was a wonderful person. And actually, as I said, she's the only person in the series that's based on a real
I
person,
love
and
it.
it's Helen. And so, but even having been based on her, obviously, as all the characters in the series have developed, when the series opened, Melanie was a single mother and Davy was 4 years
Okay.
old. And
Okay.
but I know, I will tell you what, Kinsey Milhone in the Sue Grafton books, every time you open a book, it's a beautiful day in Southern California. She's the same age, she drives the same car, she wears the same
Mhm.
little black dress, so that was so smart of her. If I had known there were going to be 31 books, I never would have started with a child that gets older all the time, like he couldn't be poor forever. And so I started with her as a single mother with this one child. But there were so many more books. We go back to, did you think there'd be 31? I thought there'd be three. Then I thought there might be five. So I thought, well, he can get a little older. And, she's changed jobs. She's obviously gotten married. It. everything about it has sort of developed over the years, and Aunt Peg has also developed over the years. And as I said, she now has her own series that has 3 books, and the
Nice.
fourth one will come out next year.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I saw that other series. Now, does that also involve dog shows or your other? We discovered before we started that we have a similar passion in horses as well. So, I saw some of the titles on the other books. I didn't look into them as much. Do those have horses as well as dogs or?
The they do the most recent one that came out, this one, Peg and Rose Play the Ponies. And
Okay.
I live in Kentucky now, because we have racehorses. We talked about that. And in one of the earlier books, it actually in the Melanie series, is called Live and Let Growl. And Aunt Peg
Good.
goes off, and Melanie, they go off to Kentucky because Aunt Peg has a horse. And so when I started to write the other series, I thought, well, she's got to do something with that broodmare. She needs to, do it. So
Yeah.
she came back to Kentucky for this one. So,
Okay.
oh, and there was another book. I have to say, Hot Dog, Davy, who is at
Okay.
that point 12, gets a pony. Melanie's
Oh,
ex-husband,
yes.
yeah, the first husband comes back and is trying to ingratiate himself and buys a pony and delivers it to Melanie's house. And she lives in the suburbs on in a little house on a little plot of land and gets handed, a lead rope. Said, now you have a Welsh pony. Isn't that fun? So, so every so often I put horses in, but the slant of the new series is more that Aunt Peg, like the others, has grown older as the series has gone on, and she's now in her 70s. And she and her sister-in-law, who appears occasionally throughout the Melanie series, they're
Okay.
both in their 70s, and so they are two older women solving mysteries.
I
Then, so
love
it's
it.
more that slant of, how would older women approach this? And plus, they work as a team, sometimes a very reluctant team, but as a team. They in the first book in the series, Pedigree to Die For, which actually opens with Aunt Peg's husband dying, and
Okay.
she tries to pin it on her sister-in-law Rose. So they have mostly not had a great relationship until they,
Okay.
at the age of, about 70, think maybe it's time we bury the hatchet here. And that's when the new series starts.
Okay. All right. I'll have to check that out because I mean, one of the things I love, your characters felt so real. I felt like I was just sitting there with them. I love Melanie with this teenage son, Davy, and he's giving her a hard time driving and how she's driving and just it was just so much fun. It felt so realistic. So we'll have to
Good.
check
I'm
it.
glad you enjoyed
Yeah.
that part. People have said that to me, that they seem like real people, and
Hmm.
I'm always delighted to hear that. I would like them to seem like real people. People also say, why do people answer her questions? And I thought, I don't know. I'm a nosy person. I ask people questions all the
Yeah.
time and they
Yeah.
generally answer, you know. So, so to me, that's real. That's
Yeah.
okay. But I'm
Yeah.
glad that they seem realistic to you. I really am.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah, and it was fun too. It brought some I called it delightful and suspenseful all at the same time because it was funny to hear this young man give his mom a bit of a hard time and her internal dialogue with it too was just fantastic. So, what is up next for Melanie? What, is
At the
there a book
moment,
32?
I don't know yet because
Okay.
actually I have the Peg and Rose book. There are 3 in that series, and the next
Okay.
book that's coming out is another Peg and Rose book,
Oh,
and
fun.
the series and the book coming out after that will be another Peg and Rose book because
Okay.
that's my contract. Um, it, it's interesting, and people are wonderful about Melanie and her family and following this, as I said,
Yeah.
this progression, which has been 12 years. I mean, they've everybody in the books have aged, 12 years because this is the time that's been covered. But I think series get to the point where people have read enough about them, perhaps. Um, and there was certainly an impetus for me to start another series and a
Yeah.
spin-off series. So at the moment, after this book, and I'm delighted to have this full-length book because I had written a couple of shorter holiday books.
Yeah.
my editor likes, books that are around holiday things, and so I'd written a couple of shorter Melanie books, so I'm delighted to have another full-length book for her. But the next
Okay.
two after this will be Peg and Rose solving mysteries.
Oh, fun. All right. All right. I love it. I will have to check those out because, like I said, Peg was just this great character. She's like that person you wish you could go have coffee with all the time and eat cake.
And eat cake. I'll tell you something terrible. The San Moritz Bakery in Greenwich, and one of the reasons when I started writing this series, I lived in Connecticut. So this was my backyard,
Okay.
and I just
Okay.
thought that's so simple. And I used a lot of real places, including the San Moritz Bakery, which is now closing. And I'm just so sad about this. I was back in Connecticut last year. My husband and I went
Oh.
back to see some old friends. And we went to Greenwich and went to the bakery and bought a mocha cake and took it
I
back to
love
our
it.
hotel room. We were eating mocha cake.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong. It was funny. I read this actually on my vacation, and I was telling my husband, I'm like, I need some chocolate cake. This book is making me
Yeah.
want to get some cake. So,
But Aunt Peg has always had a sweet tooth, and she makes no bones about it. She wants her Earl Grey tea and her cake, and that's her. Mhm.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, if readers want to keep up on your next releases, do you have a author newsletter, social media website, anything like that? Or what is the best way for them to find out about new releases?
Actually, at the moment, the best way is Facebook. I have both a personal page and an author page. I had
Okay.
a website. The woman who was maintaining my website has had some health issues, and my website is not currently up. And my
Okay.
newsletter was tied into that, so I have kind of lost both of them, hopefully temporarily. But
Okay.
I'm on Twitter and I'm on Facebook, as I said, with both an author page and if people write to me. I answer, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm there, I'm around, I'm easy to find. So, that's probably the best way at the moment. Hopefully I'll get a little better in the future, but right at the moment that's
Yeah.
fit Facebook or Twitter. Mhm.
Facebook or Twitter. Okay. That sounds great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's truly been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. Really great. Thank
Good.
you. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. And everyone, I highly recommend Die Another Dane. And if you haven't read any of Lori's book, you can go and start with book one. You got 31 to read. And until next time, keep your tails wagging and pages turning. Thanks for joining me today. Sit, Stay, Read is a part of the Authors on the Air Global Network. If you enjoyed today's author interview, be sure to leave a review and share the episode with a fellow animal-loving reader. If you're curious about the world of working dogs and wilderness adventures, please check out my books at KathleenDonnelly.com. Until next time, curl up with your best furry friend and sit, stay, read.